Okay, so we'll talk about the brain. Brain is a part of your central nervous system. You already know central nervous system consists of a brain and a spinal cord. Brain is the most powerful, most delicate and the most important organ of your body. That's why the brain is heavily protected in your body, because it is very delicate, very powerful, very important organ. So we'll talk about the protection of the brain, how your brain is protected. Then we'll talk about the ventricles. Ventricles are fluid-filled cavities. Remember that? Fluid-filled cavities inside the brain. So we'll talk about the ventricles. Then we'll talk about the parts of a brain, surface marking and lobes. We have already talked about white matter, gray matter, right? So we'll skip that. Then we'll talk about the functional areas in the cerebral cortex. The surface of the brain, outer surface, is called the cerebral cortex, which is gray matter, you already know, has many areas responsible for different tasks, functions, okay? So we'll see the important areas where they are located in the cerebral cortex or surface of the brain. Then we'll talk about homunculi. So very interesting maps of your whole body in the brain. Homunculi are the maps of the whole body in the brain. So we'll see what are the homunculi. So first we'll see the protection of the brain. Since your brain is very delicate and the most important organ, so brain is protected heavily. If we start from the outside to inside, first the skull, the thick skin, okay, then you have the bone, cranial bone, this one. But remember, the bone is covered by periosteum. You all know that, right? The covering of the bone is what? Periosteum. Remember that? So, you have the periosteum, that is the covering of the bone, connective tissue covering, and then you have the bone, cranial bone, this one. So this is the cranial bone. Okay. So periosteum is the connective tissue covering of the bone under the skull. Then you have the cranial bone. Cranial bone. Under the cranial bone, you have a thick layer of meninges, which is the thickest layer of the meninges, that is called dura mater. So dura matter, which is the thick membrane of thick outer layer of meninges. Then you have another layer of meninges that is called arachnoid matter. There is a gap, and then this layer is the another layer of meninges that is called arachnoid matter. And then again you have a gap here, and the innermost meninges, layer of meninges which is very thin and directly attached to the surface of the brain. So this is the innermost thin layer of meninges attached to the surface of the brain, and that is called the pia mater. Pia mater. So these three are meninges. Outermost is the thickest and toughest one. And thick, that is the dura mater. Middle one is the arachnoid mater, and innermost thin one, which is attached to the surface of the brain directly, it is difficult to separate, that is the pia mater. Okay. Now, you see, between dura and arachnoid, you have a space that is called subdural space. Makes sense? Under the dura mater, that's why it is called subdural space. Sub means what? Under, below. Subdural space. And under the arachnoid mater, that means between arachnoid and pia, there is a space that is called what? Subarachnoid space. Makes sense? Subarachnoid space. Is it clear? Okay. This subarachnoid space is very important. Why? Because the fluid or the cerebrospinal fluid is located in subarachnoid space. Cerebrospinal fluid is present where? In which space? Subarachnoid space. That means in between arachnoid and pia mater. That fluid plays a very important role in protecting your brain. If you didn't have the cerebrospinal fluid here, you know that bone is hard and your brain is very soft, right? So when you move your head, it would help hit the skull. Make sense? But that fluid around the brain is protecting your brain. Clear? So sometimes you ride on roller coaster, right? Suddenly moves. So your soft brain would have, hit the hard skull. But because of the presence of that cerebrospinal fluid, your brain is heavily protected. So all these structures are protecting your brain. If you see from outside to inside again, outermost is what? Thick skin, that is called? Skull. Then you have the covering of the bone, periosteum. Then you have the cranial bone, right? Then under the bone, how many meninges? 3. Outermost is the toughest one, right? That's the dura mater. That middle one is called the arachnoid mater, and innermost thin one is the pia mater. And in subarachnoid space, you have the fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid. Sometimes, if any injury occurs, like something hit your skull, bleeding occurs, that blood can accumulate in these spaces. For example, if blood accumulates in subdural space, that means under the dura mater, that is called subdural hematoma. Subdural hematoma. Makes sense? Okay. If rupture of the blood vessel occurs, blood will accumulate there, right? Because that's a space. Subdural hematoma. Blood can also accumulate above the dura mater. That in that case we'll say epidural hematoma under the bone. Okay. So epidural hematoma, subdural hematoma, that can happen. Okay. Now, if bleeding occurs here in the brain, that that blood can go to the fluid and we can detect the blood cell in the cerebrospinal fluid. Anyway, so those are the protections. Ventricles of the brain. Inside the brain, you have fluid filled cavities. How many ventricles you have? You have 4 ventricles altogether. 2 lateral ventricles, 1 third ventricle, and 1 fourth ventricle. So those are 4 ventricles. And remember, those ventricles are connected to each other. So the fluid can go from one cavity to another, one ventricle to another. So we'll see those ventricles and how they are connected. If you look this way and go inside the brain, you'll see the locations inside, not you can see just from outside of the brain, the location inside the brain. 2 lateral ventricles are like this. So like this. 2 lateral ventricles. And this is the third ventricle here, and this is the fourth ventricle here. Okay. So this is the third ventricle, and fourth ventricle is here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you look from the side this way, the ventricles are like this. This is lateral ventricle 1. This is another one. Okay. So 2 lateral ventricles. This is third ventricle, and this is fourth ventricle here. Now, how the ventricles are connected to each other? Lateral ventricles are connected to the third ventricle by this tiny passes. Those are called interventricular foramen. Very simple, interventricular foramen connects lateral to third. And third and fourth are connected by cerebral aqueduct. So this passage is called cerebral aqueduct that connects the third and fourth ventricles. Make sense? So the fluid can go from one ventricle to another. Is that helpful or not? What do you think? Yes or no? If pressure in one chamber increases, right, then fluid can go to other to maintain equilibrium, right? So if fluid amount in one ventricle increases, the fluid can go to other ventricles to reduce the pressure. Increasing the pressure inside the brain is good or bad? Bad, of course, right? You don't want to increase the pressure inside the brain, right? So that is helpful. But sometimes what can happen, tumor inside the brain, if any tumor is formed here, for example, or here, that can press the passage and can block it. Make sense? So if tumor grows, that can block that passage, and that would prevent the fluid from moving from one ventricle to another. For example, if this interventricular foramen is blocked by pressure, then what will happen? fluid will start to accumulate inside this. Make sense? Will not be able to get out. So what will happen? The ventricle will get bigger. The pressure will increase inside the ventricle. Make sense? And that is called hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus. Have you heard that? Anybody? Hydro means what? And cephalic part means the head part. Cephalic means head. So hydrocephalus, water in the head. Makes sense? So accumulation of fluid or water in your head. That means in the brain. Now, you know, in infants, have you seen the skull of an infant? So the cranial bones are not yet fused, right? So you see the soft areas between the cranial bones. So the bone can move, right? Cranial bones can move. So if hydrocephalus occurs in infants, the brain will expand, right? Because of fluid accumulation inside, and the skull will get bigger because the bones can move like this. Okay, so the head will look what? Big. But after the fusion of the cranial bones already fused, now if hydrocephalus occurs, brain will try to expand, but it will not be able to. Make sense? Because skull is already fixed, the bones. So that is more dangerous because difficult to diagnose, right? Intracranial pressure will go up quickly, right? Because brain is trying to expand but cannot. But in case of infants, the brain expands, so it can accommodate the pressure, and we can see from outside, right? The skull is getting bigger, the head is getting bigger, so you can take measures. Draining the fluid out is the first initial step to reduce the pressure. Sources of the cerebrospinal fluid. So this is the brain, and this is one lateral ventricle, and you already know in the wall of the ventricle you have one type of nuclear cells called the ependymal cells, okay, and also attached to the ceiling of the ventricle, attached to the wall of the ventricle, you have a capillary plexus that is called the choroid plexus. And this choroid plexus all the time secreting the fluid, cerebrospinal fluid here. Okay? So choroid plexus secretes the cerebrospinal fluid into the ventricles. Okay? So each ventricle has a choroid plexus, and that is continuously secreting the cerebrospinal fluid. And that fluid is moved by the cilia of the ependymal cells, okay, which is also important. Okay. Cerebrospinal fluid, number one, gives protection that I have mentioned. Also, cerebrospinal fluid has glucose and other nutrients, so help to keep the brain healthy. Okay? And so nourishes the brain and also carries some chemical signals. This is the choroid plexus. Now, how the cerebrospinal fluid circulates? You see, from the ventricles, the cerebrospinal fluid from the lateral ventricle goes to third and fourth. This is the fourth ventricle. It's the cerebral aqueduct, right? Interventricular foramen. So from the lateral through the interventricular foramen goes to the third ventricle here. Then through the cerebral aqueduct goes to the fourth ventricle. Then enters into the spinal cord. In the center of the spinal cord, you have central canal. So it goes like that. Also, fluid gets out to enter into subarachnoid space. So there are a couple of apertures, and through those apertures or openings, the fluid can enter into the subarachnoid space here, cerebrospinal fluid. So basically, fluid is released here, then will enter into the subarachnoid space as well as into the spinal cord. Okay. Parts of a brain. We can divide the brain in different ways. One is by looking at the development of the brain. We can divide into forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, but just know that the adult brain is divided into 4 big parts. One is the brain parts. Okay. The largest part is called the cerebrum. That's the sphere. If I show you the brain, the sphere, that large part is the cerebrum. Let me show you. So this is the size of the human brain, adult human brain. You can hold it on your palms like this. So this largest part is the cerebrum. It's like a sphere. Okay? And cerebrum consists of 2 halves. Each half is called hemisphere. Hemi, half, right? Sphere is what? Whole sphere is the cerebrum, right? This is the whole sphere. That's the cerebrum. Make sense? And each half is hemisphere. Okay? So 2 hemispheres, right and left. Okay. So that is the largest part. Right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Okay? 2 hemispheres. Now, if I ask you in one sentence, tell me the function of the cerebrum. Many functional areas are present in the cerebrum. Where? Now, this is the cerebrum, right? Just know that the outer surface of the cerebrum or outer layer of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex. So this is cerebral cortex, right? Outer surface. And on the surface or cerebral cortex, you have many functional areas. For example, you see in the back, this is called the primary visual cortex. That means the main area that gives you the sight, vision. This is called the primary auditory cortex. I am just giving you a few examples, okay? So this is primary auditory cortex. So cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the cerebrum, and it has many what? Many functional areas, right? Like your visual area, auditory area, right? Smell area, taste area, all those areas are present on the cerebral cortex. Okay. Number 2. Another part is called the diencephalon. Diencephalon. This part consists of the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. So those three important structures belong to the diencephalon. Okay. Let me show you. This part is called the thalamus. This is hypothalamus, hypo, below, and pituitary gland is not shown here, is here. So thalamus, hypothalamus, and below the hypothalamus you have the pituitary. So this part is the diencephalon part. Okay. Now I'll mention the function of those three structures, very important. Thalamus is called the major sensory relay. Major sensory relay station. Most of the sensory signals are relayed in the thalamus. Okay, so that's why thalamus is the major sensory relay station. Make sense? Okay. What are the sensory signals? Anybody? Sensations. Touch, pain, right? Temperature, pressure, those are the sensations, right? So, major sensory relay station. Those signals are processed in the thalamus. Hypothalamus. Under the thalamus, you have hypothalamus. So this is the thalamus again here, and hypothalamus is here. And this part is very important. Why? Because a number of important functions are performed by the hypothalamus. Number one, I'll just mention few of those, not all, just few. Number one, hypothalamus regulates, you already know. We talked about hypothalamus in integumentary system. Anybody remember? Yes, regulation of temperature, right? Yeah, vasodilation and sweating. So, temperature regulation, regulation of body temperature. That is one you already know, regulation of body temperature by regulating the sweating and vasodilation. Number two, this is very interesting, food and water intake. How much you will drink or eat is decided by the hypothalamus. Now, how? You know that when you are thirsty, right, you think I will drink a lot, then you start to drink, right? Then after a while, you stop drinking, right? Even I tell you drink more, you'll say, no, I don't want to drink anymore, okay? So you stop, right? So inhibition is created in the brain. Make sense? Same thing for eating, right? When you are hungry, you think you will eat a lot, then you start to eat, then gradually your interest is gone, right? So you don't eat anymore. So when the glucose or water enters into your body, into your blood from the food and drink, then your hypothalamus can detect how much water is there, how much nutrients are there, glucose is there. Make sense? Hypothalamus can detect and sends inhibition to your thirst and eating centers. So food and water intake is controlled by the hypothalamus. Will tell you when you have to stop. Now, if hypothalamus is not working properly, if any abnormal function of hypothalamus occurs, in some cases we see the patient keeps eating, doesn't know when to stop, okay? Continuously eating. And those patients get what? Big, right? Because they don't know where to stop, when to stop, right? They kept eating. Their eating desire continues. And there is a very interesting experiment you can see online. The scientists, they took two groups of mice in two different cases, okay? And they destroyed the hypothalamus in one group of mice and another was intact, and they let them eat as or drink as much, they want. And they found that after a month, those mice, got, hypothalamic distraction, lesion in the hypothalamus. They got like few times bigger than the regular mice, okay? So you can see the picture like this and this, okay? That tells that, right, your hypothalamus regulates the food and water intake. Another function, hypothalamus controls pituitary. Controls pituitary secretion. You know pituitary is the master gland, you already know. And that master gland is controlled by hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is very powerful. Okay? Pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is called what? Master gland. That means it is the boss of other endocrine glands and regulate the secretion of other endocrine glands of the body. So pituitary is the master gland. So that is the diencephalon. Now we'll see the brainstem. Brainstem is another part of the brain. Probably you have heard this. Brainstem consists of three structures: midbrain, pons, and medulla or medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. So midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, these structures form the brainstem, but they belong to brainstem. Okay? Make sense? Let me show you. This part, see here, this is called the midbrain part, and this round part here is called the pons, and this is the medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord. So midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. So this part is the brainstem part, okay, before the spinal cord, above the spinal cord. Make sense? Okay. Brainstem is very important, like here. And this part of your body is very delicate. Why? Because the brainstem has the vital regulatory centers, important regulatory centers. For example, your cardiac centers, your respiratory centers. Okay, cardiac centers regulate what? A function of the heart, right? Cardiac. Respiratory centers regulate your breathing. Make sense? So those centers are located in the brainstem. That's why brainstem lesion can cause immediate death. If brainstem is damaged, the person may die immediately because of the stoppage of heart and breathing, respiration. Make sense? So this part is very important. Okay, if somebody shoots here, then the person will immediately die. Immediately. Okay, so very important. So the function of the brainstem is cardiac center, cardiac centers, respiratory centers, respiratory centers, as well as reflex. Some reflex centers are there. So that's why brainstem is very important. Okay. The last part is the cerebellum. So number 4 is cerebellum. So cerebrum and cerebellum are two different structures. Cerebrum is this whole sphere, right? Is cerebrum. Cerebellum is below the back part of the cerebrum. This is called cerebellum. So located under the posterior part of the cerebrum. And cerebellum is mainly responsible for balance and equilibrium. When you walk, when you stand up, right? When you run, your balance of your body is maintained by the cerebellum. So balance and equilibrium. Is maintained by the cerebellum. So to maintain the balance of your body, when you, like for example, you have seen in circus, so you know, girls can walk, or you know, those people can walk on the ropes, right? So their body balance is very good. Why? Because they train their cerebellum from their very early, you know, part of their life. So that cerebellum is well trained. Make sense? You can do that. You can train your cerebellum to do those skilled, balanced tasks. Okay. So now you can think that your cerebellum needs signal from where to maintain the balance? From the skeletal muscles, right? From the joints. Like when our body tilts, the joint, right? Tilt occurs at the joints, right? Movement occurs at the joints, as well as the tendons of the skeletal muscles. You have the receptors that can send signal to the cerebellum that your body is tilting this way or that way. Okay, okay. Then your cerebellum will send signal to the muscles to fix it. So cerebellum receives signal from the joints or the tendons of the skeletal muscles or spindles. Here you see those 4 parts. So this big part is the cerebrum. Then this is the diencephalon. So thalamus is like an egg. This is the thalamus. Then hypothalamus, pituitary gland. Okay, so diencephalon. Then the brainstem, midbrain, pons is this round part, medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum is here. Okay, so those are the parts of the brain and their functions. Okay. Now we'll see the cerebral hemisphere. Again, this is the cerebrum, right? Remember that? How many hemispheres? 2, right and left, right? And if you see the surface of the cerebrum, look at this. We have many sulci, grooves, many grooves, right? These grooves are called what? Some people say sulci. So, on the surface of the cerebrum, you have many grooves like this. So, those are the sulci. Sulci are shallow grooves, like, you know, not too deep, shallow grooves. There are many all over the cerebrum. You have those shallow grooves. In some areas you have deep groove, that is called a fissure. So if you see shallow grooves, we have many. Those are called sulci, and we have few deep grooves. Those are called fissures. Okay? And in between two sulci, like this is one sulcus, this is another sulcus. Sulci is plural. Sulcus is singular. So this is one sulcus, this is another sulcus. In between these two sulci, you see the area part, ridges. These are called gyri. So gyrus is singular and gyri is plural. Some people say gyri. That's also okay. Okay. So in between two sulci, the ridge is called what? Gyrus, right? One. And we have many. So we have many sulci, many gyri, and few fissures on the surface. The goal is, why you have so many sulci? Increase surface area. It's like folds, right? You know, in your home, you use the cotton, and you can, when you fold, squeeze, it takes very small area, right? Like you can squeeze it like this. There are folds, right? Now you can spread it, that gives big area, right? So the brain is like that. You have many sulci. Now if you make it flat, it will be huge, big, like cover the whole, whole room. That big. Make sense? The surface area, more means what? More neurons are there. Make sense? More surface area means more neurons, more cells. That's how your brain can hold. Inside the brain, you have 100 billion of neurons. 100 billion of neurons. Not million or trillion. So, now, if someone's brain has more sulci, in general, we'll say what? That brain is smarter. More sulci means more surface area, bigger surface area, more neurons, the processing will be better, in general, right? In human brain, we see much more sulci than other creatures. Make sense? Some creatures are huge, but brain is like kind of flat, surface is kind of flat. In human, we have more. Now if you see Einstein's brain, okay, and a common person's brain, you can see the pattern, okay, is different. There is, a few studies after death of Einstein, they took his brain out, okay, and kept it for many years, and they studied the brain. And they took the brain tissue and saw under the microscope in the cerebral cortex, the cells, the density and the size of the cells of neurons is different than common average people. Yes.
Isn't there also a study that says that smart people's brains are actually smaller because they're more efficient?
Yeah, the size, external size doesn't matter. External size doesn't matter. Even if it is small, you have more, groups or sulci, that means you have bigger surface area. Not only surface area is a matter, same surface area, your brain and another person's brain, how healthy the neurons are there, right? So that is another factor. I don't know about that study that says that a smaller brain is, more in smarter people than
There's
bigger,
probably,
right?
they probably found some correlation, but it's probably not universal.
Yeah, I think so. It's probably not that, real finding. Okay. So, those are the structures you see on the surface of the cerebrum. Lobe. Each hemisphere has 4 lobes. Frontal lobe is here, more or less covered by the frontal bone. Frontal bone is here, okay? Not exactly, but most part of it is covered by the frontal bone. Then you have which bone here? Parietal bone, right? So you have parietal lobe here. This is temporal bone. So your temporal lobe is here. This is the temporal lobe, frontal, the front. This is the parietal, the blue. And this is the occipital. Occipital bone is here. Occipital lobe. So some books says 5 lobes because there is a part inside. If I move like this, make some opening here, I will see another structure that is called insula. But if I